Hey. Throw RA here. I guess I never thought I'd be that guy, the one posting some deeply personal, messy story to strangers online because I don't know where else to put it. But here we are. I flew to Ukraine during the war. Yeah, that war. Air raid sirens, blackouts, checkpoints, the whole 9 yards. People thought I was insane. Maybe I was. But when someone you love says they need you, you go. You drop everything. You go. Let me back up a second. I'm American. My wife, well, now probably ex, she's Ukrainian. We met 5 years ago, married 3. She's gorgeous, smart, stubborn in that fiery way Eastern Europeans are famous for. She moved here after we got married, but her mom got sick last year, so she went back home just for a few months. That turned into 8. Then 10. Then, radio silence. At first, I chalked it up to the war. Bombings. Blackouts. She'd text I'm okay every few days. But those messages got shorter. Colder. One day, she stopped texting altogether. And I started spiraling. You know when something's off, but you can't prove it? That was me. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't work. My gut kept screaming something was wrong, but I wanted to believe it was just the war making things hard. So I did what any completely rational person would do, I bought a one-way ticket to Kiev. I told myself I was going to check on her. Make sure she was safe. But let's be real, I was chasing a ghost. I just didn't know it yet. Kiev was colder than I remembered. Not just the weather, the air felt hollow. Like the city had breathed out and forgotten how to breathe back in. There were people everywhere, sure, life hadn't stopped completely, but everything was edged with fear. Every shadow could be something worse. I landed, dropped my stuff at a hostel, and tried to call her. Straight to voicemail. Fine. No big deal. Maybe she was sleeping. Maybe she didn't have power. Maybe. I waited 3 hours before walking the 2 miles to her mother's apartment. I rehearsed what I'd say 100 times, something cool and supportive like, hey, just wanted to check in, make sure you're okay. But my heart was hammering so loud I couldn't think. I buzzed the door. Nothing. Buzzed again. Then the door opened and it wasn't her. It was some old guy in a bathrobe. I stumbled over my words in broken Ukrainian. Hi, Yulia? Does she still live here? He blinked at me. Moved out. Months ago. The world tilted. I asked for her mom, he said she passed away. Cancer, last December. No one told me. Not a text. Not a call. Not a word. And she moved? Where? Why? He didn't know. He just shut the door with a soft good luck, like I was some lost tourist. And maybe I was. That's when it hit me, something was wrong. And it wasn't the war. It was her. So now I'm standing in the freezing street, staring at a locked door in a city where I don't speak the language well, with jet lag, grief, and a knot in my stomach the size of a grenade. I texted her again. Where are you? I'm in Kiev. Call me. Message delivered. No response. I tried calling. Still straight to voicemail. I started walking, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. Ended up at this little cafe we used to go to, one of those half-basement places with tiny chairs and thick coffee. The kind where you duck in from the cold and sit with your knees pressed against someone else's. I thought maybe she'd show up. Like muscle memory would pull her back here. Of course she didn't. Instead, I got a text. Not from her, from her cousin, Anya. We'd met once at the wedding. She was the only one from Yulia's family who seemed to like me. The text just said, "You should go home. It's better." Better? Better for who? I called her immediately. She picked up after 5 rings. Whispered, "She's with someone else." "I'm sorry," and hung up before I could say anything. That was the moment I stopped feeling cold. My body went into this weird numb autopilot. Betrayal is a funny thing. It doesn't burn right away. It's quiet at first. Like a flicker before the explosion. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, holding my phone like it might turn into a time machine. How could she do this? How could she leave me in the dark for months, bury her mother without telling me, move out, move on, and just erase me? But part of me already knew the answer. That night, I didn't sleep. Just lay there in that tiny hostel bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying every conversation from the last year like a detective at a murder scene. The truth wasn't in what she said. It was in what she didn't say. "No, I miss you. No, I wish you were here." No plans. No future tense. Her texts had become weather reports, no power again. Food line was long. "I'm tired." I thought she was just surviving. Turns out, she was detaching. I started scrolling back through our messages, looking for clues. Little shifts in tone. Shorter replies. Gaps of silence that got wider and wider. God, how didn't I see it? Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to believe it. Here's the part that really screwed me up. I didn't even know who this someone else was. Some random Ukrainian guy? A soldier? Someone who reminded her life didn't have to be about waiting? And worse, had it started before she left? Was I just the backup plan? The safety net while she found something real? I tried not to let my mind go there, but it did. Over and over. Like a needle stuck in a scratch. I thought about flying back the next morning. Booking the first flight out and pretending this whole thing never happened. But something in me twisted. Broke. And then, hardened. No. I wasn't running. Not yet. I needed answers. Even if they destroyed me. The next morning, I sat in a smoke-stained hallway outside a makeshift cyber cafe, basically a guy with a bunch of old PCs and decent Wi-Fi. I was halfway through emailing my boss some excuse about needing more time off for personal reasons when my phone buzzed. It was her. Just 3 words. "Don't look for me." That was it. No, I'm sorry. No explanation. Just a cold command, like I was some stranger poking around where I didn't belong. I stared at that message so long the screen dimmed. My hands were shaking. I wanted to throw the phone, scream, punch the wall, anything to make the pressure in my chest stop building. But instead, I typed. Too late. She didn't reply. I started asking around. Dangerous move, I know. But I needed to find her. Not to get her back, not anymore, but to understand. I couldn't leave Ukraine without knowing what the hell happened to the woman I married. I hit up Anya again. She didn't respond to texts, so I called from a local number. She answered. Whispered again. She's in Dnipro. She's living with someone. Just, let it go. Let it go? I'd crossed the damn Atlantic. I'd walked through air raid sirens and curfews. I wasn't about to let it go because Yulia decided I didn't exist anymore. I asked for an address. Anya hung up. But she texted it 30 minutes later. That's when my heart really started to crack. Not because I finally had a destination. But because a part of me still hoped maybe it wasn't true. Spoiler, it was. I booked the bus to Dnipro with a mix of determination and dread. The bus ride was surreal, a long, shaky trip where I sat between strangers, all of us silent and lost in our own thoughts. As we crossed through landscapes scarred by conflict, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was journeying not just to find her, but to confront every hidden part of our past. I spent the ride questioning every decision I'd ever made. Was I chasing a ghost? Or was I simply trying to salvage the pieces of my shattered heart? The blur of fields, small towns, and abandoned factories reminded me that nothing was permanent, neither the city, nor the love that had once seemed unbreakable. When the bus finally pulled into Dnipro, dusk was settling in. I stepped out into a city that was both familiar and completely foreign. The air had a tangible weight of tension, and the streets were quieter than I expected. Every step felt like walking deeper into a maze of memories and unanswered questions. Pulling out the address Anya had texted, I navigated narrow streets until I reached a modest apartment block. This was the place, her new home. The building stood in stark contrast to the sprawling chaos outside, tired, unassuming, yet holding secrets in its peeling paint and dim corridors. Before I could knock on the door, a neighbor approached me. His voice was low, cautious. "You're not one of them, are you?" he asked, eyes darting around as if the walls might have ears. It was clear that in Dnipro, trust wasn't given lightly. I explained that I was looking for Yulia. The neighbor frowned, then sighed. "She's been seen around. Not welcoming visitors, though. You might want to think twice about coming here." His warning sank in fast. I had no idea what awaited me beyond that door, only that I had to face it, for my own closure. The crisp night air, the uncertain faces around me, and the echoes of past promises mingled into a heavy silence. I stood there, deciding if I was brave enough to step further into the unknown. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring at her door like it might disappear if I blinked too hard. The hallway smelled like dust and boiled cabbage, and every creak in the floor above sounded like a warning. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, this time harder. A pause. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate. And then she opened the door. It was her. Same face. Same eyes. But different. Sharper. Colder. Like the war hadn't just changed her, it had erased the version of her I knew and replaced it with someone harder, more tired. She didn't look surprised to see me. Just annoyed. "What are you doing here?" she asked in Ukrainian. Not "Oh my God, are you okay?" Not "I can't believe you came." Not even "Hi." I didn't answer right away. My throat felt like sandpaper. All I could say was, "I needed to see you." She crossed her arms. "You shouldn't have come." And then, from deeper in the apartment, I heard a voice. A man's voice. Casual. Comfortable. Calling her name. She didn't flinch. Didn't explain. Didn't look guilty. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't some wartime fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was her life now. "You could have told me," I said, voice cracking. She looked at me like I was a stranger asking for directions. What would it have changed? Everything. Nothing. I didn't have a good answer. So I just stood there, stupid and broken, while the man's shadow moved behind her down the hall. "Go home," she said. "There's nothing here for you." And then she closed the door. I didn't move for a long time. I just stood there, staring at that door like it might open again if I waited long enough. Spoiler, it didn't. Eventually, a light in the hallway flickered out, and I took that as my cue to go. My legs felt mechanical. I walked out of that building like I'd just survived a car crash, dazed, hollow, not entirely sure where the blood was coming from. Outside, the city had gone quiet. No sirens, no traffic. Just the dull hum of war-worn silence. The kind that makes you feel like you're the only person left alive. I sat on a cold bench near the river, pulled out my phone, and stared at her last text, "Don't look for me." She didn't say "I'm sorry." She didn't even say goodbye. She just cut the cord and let me fall. That night, I drank. Not proud of it, but I needed the burn. Something to match what was tearing through my chest. And somewhere between the third and fourth shot of bottom-shelf vodka, it hit me. I came all this way not to fix anything, but because I couldn't accept that I didn't matter anymore. That someone who promised forever could just stop caring. But she did. She already had. That realization hurt more than anything. It was never about the war. It was about her choosing a new life and not giving a damn what that meant for me. I had to stop chasing a ghost. But I didn't know how yet. The next morning, I woke up in a cheap room above a bar. My head was pounding, my mouth tasted like regret, and my phone battery was dead. Perfect trifecta. But for the first time in days, maybe weeks, I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about me. What the hell was I doing? I flew into a war zone for a woman who ghosted me, disrespected me, and erased me like a typo. I came here thinking I was fighting for love. But really, I was just refusing to let go of the story I'd written in my head. It was time to stop being the sad protagonist in a tragedy and start being something else. Anything else. So I did something impulsive again, but for the first time, it wasn't about her. I found a local humanitarian group that helped with evacuations and aid deliveries. I walked in and said, "I speak English, bad Ukrainian, and I'm not afraid to carry boxes or dodge potholes." They looked at me like I was insane, probably fair, but they needed hands. Foreigners were rare in Dnipro. Volunteers even rarer. I signed some paperwork I barely understood and just got to work. The next few days were a blur of sweat, diesel fumes, and makeshift shelters. I helped distribute food. I shoveled snow. I patched tents with duct tape and prayer. My body ached and my brain felt like mush, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting on a text or imagining a door opening again. I was here. Present. Broken, yeah, but rebuilding. One box, one step, one damn breath at a time. About a week into volunteering, I met a guy named Maxim. Late 30s, ex-journalist turned field organizer. Guy had this haunted look in his eyes, like he'd seen too much and stopped pretending otherwise. We were unloading a truck full of canned food when he said, without looking up, "You didn't come here for this." I froze, holding a box halfway out the back of the van. "What do you mean?" "You've got that look," he said. "The one people have when they're not running towards something, but away from it." He wasn't wrong. So I told him. Not everything, but enough of the wife, the betrayal, the door that closed in my face. He didn't flinch. Didn't give me some cliché about time healing wounds or she didn't deserve you. He just lit a cigarette and said, "War doesn't just break buildings. It breaks people. You're not the only one trying to make sense of what's left." That hit harder than I expected. Because that's exactly what I was doing, trying to make sense of what was left of me. Maxim started letting me tag along on his runs. We drove out to these little edge-of-nowhere towns with roads like shattered bones and people who hadn't seen help in weeks. It wasn't glamorous. But it was real. And the more I worked, the less space she took up in my head. I started writing again, too. Notes on my phone. Journals scrawled in cheap notebooks. Not about her. About this. What I was seeing. Feeling. Rebuilding. Not everything was pain. Some things were purpose. It was during one of these trips that I met her. Not Yulia, but someone who looked like her in the way a memory can mirror itself, familiar but warped. Her name was Alina, a widow in her early 40s, living in a makeshift home just outside the city. Her husband had been a soldier, killed early on in the conflict. Her eyes were heavy with loss, but there was something else, too: strength. The kind of strength that only comes from surviving things no one should have to survive. Alina didn't speak much. She'd smile occasionally, but her face was more used to grief than joy. Still, she welcomed us into her little house, offering stale bread and what little tea she had left. And as we sat there, surrounded by the remnants of her life, I found myself talking. Talking about the things I hadn't said aloud in months. About Yulia. About the hurt, the emptiness, the questions that kept me awake at night. Alina listened. Quiet, understanding. And when I finished, she didn't offer advice. She just said, "Sometimes we carry ghosts with us, even when we don't want to." And she was right. I had been carrying Yulia's ghost for so long, it had become a part of me. Not just the woman I loved, but the image of her I held onto, even though she was long gone. And that ghost wasn't doing me any favors. Maxim and I left Alina's place in silence, but something inside me had shifted. I didn't need to carry that ghost anymore. It was time to bury it. I couldn't do it alone, though. Not fully. But I was getting closer. One day, maybe, I could finally lay it down for good. It wasn't long after Alina's words that something in me clicked. I realized I'd been treating my pain like it was something I had to hold on to, like if I let go of it, I'd disappear, too. But it wasn't who I was anymore. Not the broken man who flew across continents to pick up the shattered pieces of a life that no longer existed. And yet, even though I was getting better, I still wasn't whole. I still had days where the memories of Yulia would haunt me, her laugh, the way she used to look at me like I was the center of her universe. And in those moments, the ache was raw, immediate. But now, I could see it differently. The pain wasn't who I was. It was just something I had carried, a scar. Scars heal, right? So, I started letting go of what wasn't mine to hold on to anymore. I went back to the place where we used to go on lazy Sundays, some small park in Kiev. The kind of place where you could sit on a bench for hours, staring at the sky and pretending life wasn't unraveling around you. I sat there alone, just breathing, thinking. I felt the wind on my face like it was the first time in ages. Like I was finally there. Present. Not trying to outrun my past, but accepting it for what it was. A chapter. Not the whole book. And that's when I realized I didn't need to go back to the life I had before. I needed to write a new one. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But with each day, I found myself doing things I hadn't done in months, maybe even years. I started getting to know the people around me. The other volunteers, the locals. Maxim, who'd become more of a brother than just a fellow aid worker, began telling me about his own battles, about the relationships he'd lost, about the things he'd seen. I realized he wasn't just a tough guy hiding his wounds, he was someone who had made peace with his pain. That made me want to do the same. One day, after a particularly grueling round of relief work, Maxim took me to a small local cafe. It wasn't much, barely more than a hole in the wall, but it was warm, and it had the kind of coffee that tasted like it was brewed by someone who cared. We sat there in silence for a while, drinking our coffee, before he looked at me and said, "You know, the hardest part isn't moving on. It's accepting that you don't have to do it alone." And that hit me. I'd been so focused on fixing myself, on getting over the past, that I hadn't realized the power in letting other people help carry it. I'd been carrying this weight like it was mine alone, but it wasn't. So I started opening up more. I talked to Maxim, to other people who had been through their own hells. It wasn't about sharing my pain, it was about releasing it. I couldn't move forward if I kept holding onto every little shard of the past, expecting it to make me whole. It wasn't easy. There were still nights when the silence was deafening. Nights when I'd feel the old ache return, the old ghost of Yulia, trying to pull me back into the past. But I fought it. Every single time. And bit by bit, I began to rebuild. Not just my life, but myself. It was about a month after I'd made the decision to stop living in the past that things really started to change. I woke up one morning, as I did most mornings, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel that familiar weight pressing on my chest. The ache of Yulia, the constant question of what went wrong, it was still there, but it didn't define me anymore. I had a new focus. I had a purpose. The work I was doing, helping people, rebuilding homes, delivering supplies, wasn't just about giving others a second chance. It was about giving myself one, too. Giving myself permission to stop being stuck in the shadow of something that no longer existed. One morning, while we were organizing a convoy of aid trucks, Maxim pulled me aside and handed me a piece of paper. "I got a call for you," he said, his voice serious. "It's a volunteer opportunity. They need someone to lead a team in a new project outside of Kiev. You'd be in charge." I stared at the paper for a moment. My first instinct was to back away. To say no. The idea of taking on more responsibility felt overwhelming. It felt like running away from what I had just started to rebuild. But then I thought about it, about the man I was becoming. The man who could move forward. The man who didn't need to be defined by his past, who didn't need to be afraid of making a new life for himself. So, I said yes. And just like that, a new chapter began. It wasn't the grand, heroic moment you'd expect from a movie, it wasn't about saving the world or finding some fairy tale ending. It was small. Simple. But it was mine. I'd left the past behind in a way I never thought possible. And for the first time, I was excited about what the future could hold. I woke up the morning after I accepted the new position with a feeling I hadn't had in a long time: peace. There was no knot in my stomach, no cold pit in my chest. I was going to do something important. Not for anyone else, not to impress Yulia, not to prove anything to anyone. But for me. It wasn't that I was completely free from the past. Hell, I still thought about her sometimes, about what we had, what we lost. But now, the thoughts were quieter, like distant echoes. They didn't control me. They didn't define me. I was finally writing a new story. Over the next few months, I threw myself into the project. I led the team, coordinated with local groups, worked side by side with people who had their own scars and their own stories. Together, we rebuilt homes, schools, and hospitals, symbols of something more than just survival. We were making life possible again. And somewhere along the way, I met someone else. Her name was Daria. She was another volunteer, a schoolteacher turned aid worker. She had this quiet strength about her, like she'd seen too much but kept going anyway. We started talking during breaks, then more and more after that. She didn't ask me about my past. She didn't judge me. She just listened when I needed to talk, and smiled when I didn't. There was no rush, no pressure. Just a slow, patient building of something real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope again. It wasn't the same as before. I wasn't looking for a replacement for Yulia. I didn't need that. But it felt good. To know that even after everything, after all the pain, there was still room for something new. Something better. One day, as I was sitting outside after a long day's work, I thought about the journey I'd taken. How I came here, broken, lost, chasing ghosts. And how, little by little, I learned to let go. To stop running. To stop clinging to something that wasn't mine to hold anymore. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need to search for meaning anymore. I was already creating it. Sometimes, life doesn't give you what you expect. Sometimes, it takes away everything you thought you knew and leaves you standing in the rubble. But if you're brave enough to keep going, to keep building from the pieces, you might just find that what you create next is more beautiful than what you had before. So, to anyone out there who's lost, broken, or stuck, keep moving forward. You're not alone. And no matter how dark it gets, there's always a way out. It might not look like what you imagined, but it'll be yours. And that's enough.